The Shape. Love him or hate him, he's certainly a killer that gets discussed a lot, and this is amid many other interesting killers that are really rather forgotten, and some we wish we could forget. However, I believe Michael Myers really is something special, but I've been struggling to say why. He's been one of my favourites for a while, so I'm going to shoot the breeze and talk about him for a bit, if you'll indulge me. What makes someone who blends in so effectively stand out? Overlooking Halloween being the first licensed chapter, and a big one at that, and the introduction of the overall respected obsession mechanic, The Shape just has a presence, doesn't he? As I played more and more Killer, despite all the top players warning me against it, I mained as the spooky boy for about 3 months. I know he's not up there with Blight and Nurse, but I would argue he's not in the very bottom tier, or, if he is, at least the top of the bottom tier. Besides, there's more than one criterion to love a killer. Yes, the meta is important. Most of us want to win, and that matters. But in my view, it's only one of 5 categories. There's also how interesting or cool the killer is, how flexible their mechanics and add-ons are, how much straight joy they bring the player, and lastly, how scary they are. DBD is still a horror game, and yeah, I know it stopped being scary around 2019, but the game still uses horror tropes and plays them straight. DBD should always at least go through the motions of being a horror game with the atmosphere, themes, and tone. Moreover, the game still functions mechanically as a survival horror game, just one with a lot of caveats and jokers. Now, I don't think it's too controversial to say Myers is one of the scariest contestants in the Entity's address book. Even hardened vets with thousands of hours can still get jump-scared. His reputation precedes him, even if his position at the shallow end of the tier list is well known. I think it's about psychological warfare. The survivors know I'm Myers, but they don't know where I am. We are aware of each other, and we know it. And this is something stealth killers do very well. Ghostface can do something similar, as can Wraith and Pig, although I'd argue that those don't have the same presence as The Shape. Philip and Amanda ambush with more of an announcement, as does Danny Johnson, albeit a little differently. And the counterplay to those 3 is more direct, be it running away from a glorified M1 killer to looking at him. They don't feel the same. And yet all of them are often, not always, but often, positioned higher than Myers on the tier lists. I like those 3 as well, but I love Myers. Getting a cheeky gen grab with The Shape is one of the giddiest joys of Dead by Daylight. The others can do it as well, but it's just not the same. It's as if I feel Myers' indifference contrasting with the survivor's yelp of fear. I always hope I give intermediate players a good scare, and irritate the veterans that don't really feel anything anymore. I'll often be showing footage from around the time All Things Wicked and the 2024 Blood Moon event were released. It was a time where I did some serious experimenting, and it was before the buff to increase walking speed in Evil Within 1 to 4.4 meters a second from 4.2, which was added at the time of the Houndmaster. So I'm very sluggish in the scratched mirror footage, but I still had fun. I love the scratch and vanity mirror builds, just on the off chance I put on a good show for the survivors. You'll need an indoor level though. But the gimmicky mirror builds aren't the only ones I toy with. I like other gimmicky builds. I still like running the Evil Incarnate build. named after the achievement which 2.5% of players have done on Steam. It's notorious amongst DBD fans, but I love it. When I did it for the first time, I just had to do it again and again. Must have gotten it a dozen times, and yes, it doesn't count when you jump in a locker, but I don't mind. You know the brutality I'm capable of. Back to the lobby with you, sweetheart. Tombstone or not, I suppose it's a bit of voyeuristic thrill watching someone with murderous intent and them not knowing you're stalking them. It's a chilling dramatic irony just like in the films, and you'll need to stalk a lot before you can tombstone everyone, but with the right build, you got it. And the shape's iconic Mori is one of my favourites. It's very simple and cold and callous in a way the others aren't. Myers' inhuman muscles lift the victim with one arm, and that's that. He's the man who can walk faster than most people can run, and his strength is just as otherworldly. He simply kills and discards. Yet I don't feel his murders are about hate or ego or sadistic joy or even boredom or contempt. It just is. It's the simplicity. Watching the light go out in the victim's eyes and then moving on to the next one, expressing his absence of personality. Myers is unknowable like that. Dead by Daylight's The Shape made me appreciate the film more. Yes, just the one. The sequels were garbage and Rob Zombie should stick to heavy metal, but the original captured something. In hindsight, it's all been done to death and arguably done better by what came after it in what all feels very old hat, but the idea of being stalked by an unknowable malevolent force was executed perfectly. And it just begs the question, what is he? Well, he's a fantastical representation of a supernatural serial murderer. There's very little that's realistic about him, and I could even argue he glorifies the tragic inner world of the psychopath as something cool and badass. He doesn't even fit strict definitions of a serial killer and is rather a rampage killer with a criminal history of juvenile murder. But Myers represents something within. It's more about the unknown. What does a pathological psychopath really think and feel? Let alone a sadistic and warped psychopath with some kind of fixation on others. Mental health professionals differ in their views, and trying to make laymen like us understand is a whole task in and of itself. Maybe Loomis was right, maybe these people really aren't human. Or maybe he's the worst psychologist in the world with utter contempt for his client. But this is assuming Myers is just a garden variety psychopath as opposed to something mystical. It's said, in his base DBD lore, he was made even more insane by the very asylum that tried to help him after he murdered his sister. Or that he kills to get some kind of inner peace. I really don't know. Magical or mundane, he is the shape of a man. A hollow husk, an emotionless void that can never participate in humanity. Only watch. I've talked about the hidden suffering of the psychopath before, both here and on my True Crime channel, so I won't harp on again. I just want to ask, again, how does something with no feeling feel? But let's look back at some DBD gameplay. The other killers all play different to Myers. For example, Trapper, Huntress and Skull Merchant and many others use tools to hunt and kill. Chainsaws, drugs, Ouroboros, a gun, a bell that turned you invisible, a whole team, a disease. The only thing Myers has is a random kitchen knife, and all killers have their M1, so that doesn't count. Even killers that have some kind of magic power as their ability have it as something external to the self. Spencer's last breath, phantasm traps, dire crows, being a dream demon, being a vampire, being dead, or undead Cenobite thingy, or even a freaking doll. The powers don't feel innate, not integral to who they are. Myers is more akin to the animalistic killers, except he feels human-ish. The likes of the Xenomorph, Demogorgon and Dredge can easily be categorised as not human, but there's something about Myers that prevents that. He was born a human, not an animal, at least not initially. He has a human-ish mind, I think. But he doesn't fit in with the human killers either. Clown, Legion, Ghostface, Doctor, even the Trickster all feel relatively normal by comparison, even if their powers are more innate to them, regardless of the fact that many of them still rely on props. Ghostface is the closest to Myers, but between his sense of humour and jaw-dropping levels of narcissism, Ghosty is still just a human. So I look at the MISC characterisation of killers. Pyramid Head, Nemesis, Unknown and Singularity aren't human either, despite possessing certain human qualities. But they may as well be aliens. Some of them are. The twins are actually too human, despite what an unforgiving feudal France saw, and too tragic to be compared to something so utterly evil. What is Michael Myers? He's an absence, a silence. It's the silence I fear the most. Many other killers have laughs of joy, or at least a feeling of satisfaction in what they do. Other killers might also suggest or even express a feeling of sheer anger and or pain. But with Myers, there's nothing. Myers just has the evil within. Myers just is the evil within. That is his power. That is who he is. Combine this with the mechanics that make players very paranoid they're being watched, and I find this irredeemable monster to be really, really funny. Myers' special power is basically to charge up the ability to hold his knife over arm. That's it. Mechanically he's unique as well, with 2 move speeds depending on the tier, and a wildly varying terror radius. And we've always loved the iconic and unique music he's always had. Myers is also physically imposing, unlike the other stealth killers, and his look is as iconic as it is scary. It's just fun to roleplay as this stalking monster. I have a lot of fun being pure evil. Not to mention he kind of has coup de grace and diet bamboozle as part of his kit. I have another build I use to min-max his power to what is the most efficient, but I have more fun with one last gimmicky build I'd like to share today. And all of my builds involve add-ons. It annoys me when people don't specify which add-ons, or items in the case of survivors, you're supposed to use to synergize with the perk loadout. And I want to be unpredictable. Fragrant tuft of hair and dead rabbit. I know that's unusual. Yeah, Evil Within 2 is minus 25% terror radius, 16 to 12 with the dead rabbit, but you'll permanently be in Evil Within 3 soon, which is plus 25% radius, 32 to 40. So I'll add Distressing on top of that. I don't know if it's additional or accumulative, but it's a good 48 meter terror radius at least. That's something players won't be used to with Myers, and his terror radius is the first unique one and is legendary amongst the community, mostly because by the time you've heard it, he's already on top of you. But what if it's huge? And then we add the unknown perk, Unforeseen. The gen you kick now gains the 32 meter terror radius for 30 seconds, and you suddenly become undetectable with no terror radius. I knew this would be fun with Myers. Now my 48 meter terror radius periodically disappears, allowing for some absolutely hilarious plays. I love inflicting the confusion, and this will work against even veterans because no one would believe anyone would run a build as insane as this. Yeah, it's not optimal. I have my optimal Myers builds, but this is just something special. It brings me so much joy. think what I like most about Myers, really, is the voyeuristic creepiness of it. As well as murdering dozens of pretty young girls. Yeah, this doesn't reflect well on me, does it? Point is, I don't agree with all this dismissing of our very own spooky boy. He's something special, so let's enjoy it.